Are we live?
We got to
Guessing
be
we're
at this
live.
point.
Let's see. Yeah, a tweet came through. We're live. I was just saying the holidays are exhausting. I'm tired. I'm ready to get back to my bed. I have another week away from Austin, Texas. It's
Yeah.
been fun though.
I mean,
A lot of travel.
I love my family. I do almost everything for them, but mentally exhausted. Absolutely mentally exhausted and ready to be home. I need to go home.
I feel the same exact way. Love my family. We've been doing a lot of traveling, pinging back and forth between my parents, my wife's parents, cousins' houses. Took a trip up to New York. Finally got to check out Pubkey. Shout out to Thomas Pacquiao, his wife Megan, everybody building that bar out. Special place. It was a great time yesterday. Got to give it a shout out to two freaks, Frank and his wife, for picking up the tab. It was very gracious of them, and I appreciate you. It was great to meet up with other Bitcoiners and some freaks in New York City. I felt like an old man in New York. I'm not in my mid-20s anymore. The city is not what it was when I lived there. Or I'm not what I was when I lived there.
Yeah, I think we've changed more than the city. I got to make it out to Pubkey. I've only heard good things. Why didn't we have a Bitcoin bar when we were in the city?
I don't
It would
know.
have been nice. All we had was Charlie Shrem's failed Bitcoin bar right before he went to jail.
What did he had one in Brooklyn? Where was his?
It was like a club. I don't know. I never went to it. I think it
I
was in
don't ever.
Manhattan. How many people were at Pubkey yesterday?
It filled up. I mean, I got there around 3 with my wife, and then we left around 7. Put in a nice 4-hour shift. By the end, by 7 o'clock, it was packed. There had to be 50 to 60 people at the bar. It's not a massive bar. It's a nice little hole in the wall
It's a nice dive
dive
bar,
bar.
right? It's like a classier dive
Yeah.
bar.
Yes, it's a dive bar. It's perfect for a man in his 30s. It's looking for not like a crazy college bar, but just a bar where we can go drink a Guinness,
Yeah, I mean
have a
dive
good
bars
hot
is like a
dog.
little bit. Dive bars are is like a little bit of a weird term, right? Because I mean most of my favorite bars are dive bars.
Same. Shout out to Pubkey in New York. Shout out to Deep Eddies in Austin, Texas. My favorite dive bar in Austin. Couple pool tables. Natty Light on
Do they
tap.
accept cash?
I do accept cash, and cash is
And there's a lot
preferred.
of bars in Austin that are card only.
Yeah, it's a shame. Pubkey doesn't accept Bitcoin yet, though. What the hell's going on there?
Marty, you got a lot of nice liquor behind you. Are you gonna partake?
No, no,
Pubkey doesn't accept Bitcoin?
not yet. They're working on it.
What the fuck, Thomas?
Let
Well,
me.
I guess I gotta go there if I want to give them shit. So I gotta make my pilgrimage and give them some shit for not accepting Bitcoin yet.
Yeah, you got to do that. Heckle them in person as often as possible until it's finally enabled. They were getting a lot of shit
Like
in Bloomberg for this.
at least have like an iPad that has either like IBEX or Breeze point of sale or some shit in the meantime.
Yeah, I don't know if their new bar just got their liquor license. Probably want to keep everything as above board as possible, I imagine.
Yeah, but if
They
you
have
accept
introduced,
cash, they accept cash, right?
yeah,
There's no difference.
no,
If anything, Bitcoin gives you more proof of income than cash does.
yeah, that's a good point. If you're listening, Thomas, I know he's probably shaking his fist at the sky. I know it's a top priority for him. We talked about it yesterday. Last RHR of the year. Here we are, Thursday, December 29th, 2022. What a year it has been. Has this been the craziest year out of the almost 10 years that we've been in this?
I think it's fucking hilarious that people are still trying to make proof of keys thing a day, proof of keys day. Like, like between FTX, Gemini Earn, BlockFi, Celsius, all the a bunch of ones that I don't even know the name of collapsing. I mean, more people have been educated on the risks of custodianship than every proof of keys day combined. Like I always thought proof of keys was like kind of like a just a complete failure to begin with, but especially this year, like we're gonna do the proof of keys virtue signaling on Twitter, where the only people that retweet it are the people that are already self custodying, and no one actually learns anything from it.
This is a vestige of Trace Mayer. Proof of Keys Day, January 3rd, every year. You should be doing
Yeah,
proof of keys every time you buy, but
I mean, besides his gaslighting Bitcoin privacy and then shilling a garbage privacy token, um, Trace was a trader, right? So he kept a shit ton of his funds on exchanges. So his vision of proof of keys day was always you would withdraw, everyone would withdraw on January 3rd, and then on like January 5th, you would redeposit and continue degen trading, which is like a completely flawed premise in the first place. Like just self custody from the get go. Like if you don't hold Bitcoin, you hold IOUs. So learn how to self custody and hold Bitcoin yourself, and then all of a sudden, every day is proof of keys day. So I just don't. I don't know. I've always had a love hate relationship with that so called holiday or movement, and this year it just seems even more of a virtue signal garbage thing than before.
yeah, and it's always been stupid to do it on January 3rd too, because people are just going to be celebrating the launch of the protocol, the anniversary of the launch, Genesis block, sort of conflicting there. But yeah, proof of keys. I mean, you should be doing it every time you buy, or if you're buying small amounts and you have a threshold of a UTXO size that you want. Once you hit that, sweep automatically. The Is this the year? Is 2022 the year that self custody was really brought to the fore in terms of people's consciousness? I mean, not people's consciousness, people's consciousness. We started out the year with the Canadian truckers rally, their bank accounts getting frozen, and centralized Bitcoin exchanges being forced to freeze individual Bitcoin holdings on their exchange. Started the year out with that, and obviously we had the Terra Luna blow up, we had the Celsius blow up, we had the BlockFi blow up, we had Gemini Earn freezing, we had FTX blow up. I think
DCG blowing up.
DCG blowing up, miners blowing up everywhere. Chaos. Year of chaos.
I think we need to be cautious with it. I think it's by a sheer numbers perspective, it is the single biggest learning experience about, more than every podcast, video, book combined, single biggest learning experience of why self custody is important and why if you're not self custodying your Bitcoin, you don't actually own any Bitcoin. But we need to be cautious about expectations and setting expectations properly, because I think it goes in line with my general thesis, which is as people get burned, they learn, and then when they learn, they actually realize they have this need, and then they seek out tools and education to improve their own situation. But people also forget, right? So like Gox, that's why I say absolute terms, because Gox was a massive learning experience percentage wise for the majority of Bitcoiners in the space, right? A lot of Bitcoiners thought Gox was quote unquote too big to fail, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of people learn from that experience, but then people forget, right? And you mentioned the Canadian truckers. 99% of people don't remember shit all from the Canadian truckers situation. And that was less than a year ago. So in like within the next few years, like people will slowly forget. We'll have the cocky new coiners in our comments on Twitter, if we're still on that godforsaken app, telling us that saying not your keys, not your coins is FUD, and that this time is different, and that we've matured past that point, and there's no way that Fidelity can rug you because Fidelity is this massive financial corporation. And then we'll have another big blow up, and then people will learn again, and it's just going to rinse and repeat over and over again.
Agreed. Agreed. The cocky new coiners will come and say, "Why would I ever self custody? It's too hard." And they'll learn. They'll learn, like many people did learn this year. But I do think, at least for me, again, in the 9 years that I've been in this space, I mean, Mt. Gox was obviously a big lesson early in my Bitcoin journey. Not that I was exposed to Mt. Gox at all, but just being around when that was all going down, that was obviously a big lesson in why you hold your own keys. But fast forward to 2022, I think everything that went on this year really drove that point home and hopefully woke up enough people who have exposure to Bitcoin, own Bitcoin, to really light a fire under their asses to take control of their keys. And I think the data is proving that the lesson has been learned for many in terms of the amount of coins that have moved off exchange, hundreds of thousands to millions.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely at a self custody all time high, which means we're at a Bitcoin ownership all time high in terms of distribution. But yeah, I think people that came in 2022 and 2021, it'll turn out that those people that survived will have a very strong fundamental base. Just like the people that came in 2013 and survived Gox had a very strong fundamental base, right? Um, they don't need any education, any further education on why learning how to use Bitcoin in a sovereign manner is important. But yeah, there will be many more such lessons in the future,
Yes, there will
and
be.
they'll make these blowups look fucking tiny in comparison. Like there's gonna be whole nations rug pulled.
Right? Going back to like El Salvador, whole nations, companies like MicroStrategy that just bought more Bitcoin. We don't have that on the list. They just bought more Bitcoin. I think the stat I saw is MicroStrategy now owns one out of every 135 Bitcoin in existence, which is pretty insane. But yeah, if you're a nation state or a large corporation holding Bitcoin, hopefully to give your citizens peace of mind or your shareholders peace of mind, you're at least putting that Bitcoin in an auditable multi-sig that people can view on the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if like just on the surface for a large corporation or a nation state, uh, there's obviously disadvantages to certain self custody setups, right? So I think for them, at least in the near term, collaborative custody is a really fantastic balance of trade offs for them because you get the transparency, you get the auditability, but then you also don't have single points of failure. Um, like I don't know. I mean, just for an extreme example, right? Uh, all else equal, like Bukele holding all of El Salvador's Bitcoin on, his Blue wallet on his phone or his Ledger wallet or something, or his cold card, is not necessarily an ideal situation for the country. So there's definitely a little bit more nuance when it comes to nations and corporates rather than individuals. But I think collaborative custody is just a really beautiful trade-off model for these types of organizations and entities.
Agreed. I mean, it's a no-brainer if you truly are being genuine about wanting to hold Bitcoin on behalf of your country or your company and your shareholders. The least you can do is is do collaborative custody to give that transparency and auditability. So people can trust that you're actually have the Bitcoin number one. Because we talked about that a couple months ago, right? Like we've heard all these announcements of Bitcoin purchases from El Salvador, but not once have we ever seen a wallet associated with that. Those buys that actually proves that they actually bought Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's all just from his tweets.
Yeah,
We just know based on Bukele's tweets.
yeah. But yeah, Logan, pull that stat back up. I thought this was interesting. Jameson Lopp tweeted this out earlier today, which is as the exchange rate dropped in 2022, the number of Bitcoin addresses storing certain amounts increased. We're approaching 1 million addresses holding more than one Bitcoin, that's a lot of. I mean, obviously,
Stop
one
reusing
individual.
addresses.
Yeah, stop reusing addresses. Number one, but then caveat here too. With this, yes, there may be a million individual addresses holding more than one Bitcoin, but one individual can hold multiple addresses that each have more than one Bitcoin in it. But I just thought the stat was pretty interesting.
I just like there's definitely room for discussion and debate over if you're concerned about transaction fees increasing, what size UTXOs you want to have. But that debate should happen significantly lower than a coin. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dox my setups or anything, but I'd like to have at least a million sats in UTXO.
Yeah, I mean, there's a privacy implication. Well, first of all, if you're reusing addresses, then everything that you've sent to that address is connected to each other by default, obviously, because they're all going to the same address. But the second thing is, if you're going to spend in the future, are you going to buy a sandwich for 100,000 Sats, 0.0001 Bitcoin, and then have change that is fucking 0.99 Bitcoin? It's ridiculous that you're literally when you're making a payment, you're saying to the person, I have at least change of pretty much a whole Bitcoin that is right there. So from a privacy perspective, you want your UTXOs to be in at least more spendable amounts. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where you're trying to break it down in the future, maybe using collaborative transactions there to kind of muddy the waters in terms of on-chain analysis. But I'm always like I like these kind of stats kind of, I don't know, they kind of rub me the wrong way a little bit. It's like hard to take anything meaningful from it. And like how many of
Yeah,
those a million addresses are Coinbase cold storage or Binance cold storage or something like that? Like we don't know.
yeah, and does Prime Trust really have segregated accounts for each individual user of the platforms that are leveraging them? And if so, like, could this be segregated accounts for those users controlled by one entity potentially?
Well,
Hard
my
to confirm.
understanding of how Prime Trust works is they have segregated accounts on the fiat side, their bank, um, which, let's be honest, segregated accounts in the traditional finance world just means like different rows on the Excel sheet. But then on the Bitcoin side, they use Fireblocks, and Fireblocks supports shitcoins, so they can't do multi-sig. So they do multi-party computation, which tries to create the same result as multi-sig, but is a lot more complex. But my understanding is that Bitcoin in Fireblocks is not actually segregated wallet-wise. It's segregated legally speaking, like on their like the liabilities on their balance sheet or whatever. It's like it would be like Marty Bent has this much Bitcoin, so like legally segregated, but not actually individual wallets.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's interesting we're on this Prime Trust
Otherwise,
tip.
Uh, Otherwise, when you do a withdrawal from Prime Trust or whatever, if you're like stacking $5 a day, you would see like a bunch of tiny little inputs when you do a withdrawal.
Yeah, I doubt that's happening.
which users do not see.
Yeah. No, it's interesting around this prime block tip too. I forget where I saw it or was having a conversation with somebody about it in a Telegram group as it pertains to FTX. I think it was FTX US was leveraging Prime Trust for their Bitcoin buys and sells, and somebody said one case that could be made is that since Prime Trust was actually handling the Bitcoin, FTX creditors who got rug pulled may be able to actually go to Prime Trust and say, hey, you actually owe us the Bitcoin because you were controlling it at the end of the day. You had actual
Was
ownership over the Bitcoin.
was FTX US using Prime Trust for Bitcoin?
Yeah,
They were definitely using them for fiat.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe they were using them for Bitcoin too.
What's the source on that?
I'm not going to
Random
divulge the
Twitterer?
source. Again, I can't even recall.
Oh.
I think it was a Telegram chat I was having with some people in the industry.
Because I know they were using them for like wires and fiat shit.
Yeah. So be on the lookout. It might be an attack vector, and yeah, then if Prime Trust gets dragged into that whole mess, would be interesting to see if that affects their other customers who are leveraging them as well.
Yeah, I mean, all eyes on DCG too. Well, at least
Yeah.
my eyes are on DCG.
Oh, we know. We've seen it.
I posted. So I posted a tweet yesterday. It's been 42 days since Gemini earned froze withdrawals, and Barry Silbert still owes users $900 million. And someone commented underneath, was like, uh, "How am I just seeing this? I feel like it's not on my Twitter feeds anywhere." And he was being completely serious. I've tweeted about it like 25 times over the last 2 weeks. So can't stop. Got to keep talking about it.
We will keep talking about it. We're not going to stop just because it's the end of the year. The calendar turns and we march into 2023. We will still be warning you freaks that Barry Silbert owns Gemini users $900 million worth of Bitcoin.
And so then I have it on the list, but Gemini is involved. It has a class action lawsuit against them now for the earn product. So there's going to be a little bit of a war shaping up there between users and Gemini and DCG. And DCG, like Gemini is not the only counterparty that DCG owes money to. There's a bunch of smaller exchanges that they also owe money to that were using them for their yield product, their quote unquote yield product. So we'll see how long this plays out, but it could be a really contracted, long bankruptcy process that just drags on everybody.
Yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. The chaos is not going to stop. That's for damn sure. The
We'll
contagion
cover it
may
week
not
in and
be
week
over.
out.
One thing we do week in and week out, which we haven't done yet, is go to Clark's dashboard. It's last rip of the year. We'd be remiss not to touch on the dashboard. Right now, the price of Bitcoin is 16,630 bucks. One buck's going to get you 6,013 sats. We're currently at block height 769,000. Nice, 442. There are 670 blocks until the next difficulty adjustment, which is estimated to be on January 3rd, 2023. And as of right now, it's looking like it's going to be a negative 7.2% downward adjustment. Block's been coming in at 10 minutes, 47 seconds on average. We will loop back to this when we get done with the dashboard, because I think that's a good topic to jump into, is what's going on in the mining world, what's going on with hash rate in the last week. It's been a bit volatile. There are many reasons for that, and we will touch on them. There are currently 2,100, around 2,100 transactions in Clark's mempool. There are 6,688.79 Bitcoin in unspent capacity on Samourai's Whirlpool. I believe this is a new RHR all-time high. in unspent capacity. I think we're hitting new all-time highs week in and week out now. That's 111.2 million bucks worth of unspent value. More people coin joining. Love to see it. But yeah, the mining stuff, big downward adjustment on the way, negative 7.2%. At some point over the weekend, that was estimated to be a negative 12% downward adjustment. And if you were paying attention to hash rate, it fell significantly toward the end of last week, temporarily falling below 200 exahash a second. I believe it hit like 155. Logan, you can pull up the newsletter of it earlier this week. We have some of these stats in here. But yeah, and so this was in reaction to miners that were engaged in demand response programs on grid systems here throughout the US as we had that Arctic blast tear through the country, going all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Temperatures fell pretty significantly.
Marty, Arctic blast. Arctic blast is what they were calling it last year. This year it was a bomb cyclone, right?
No, I think you got that switched up. I think bomb cyclone was last year, Arctic blast this year.
Where are these names coming from? Sorry, continue.
The meteorologist, I don't know. People. The marketing department behind the meteorologist, most likely.
Sorry, I cut you off. But
yeah, so temperatures fell in Texas and Austin, Texas. It got down to like 15 degrees. When that happens, people stay in their homes. They turn up their heat, turn on their appliances, buckle down. So it's a significant increase in demand for electricity from these grids. Obviously, demand response has been a big theme in Bitcoin mining. It's been one of the narratives is that Bitcoin is going to help make grids more stable. And so as temperatures fell, demand for electricity went up. A lot of miners, particularly in Texas, I know in Tennessee as well, shut down their machines so that electricity that they were using could be served to the grid to reach peak demand. And this had a lot of people on Twitter saying that, or some people on Twitter saying that like Bitcoin miners were saving lives. And and they were saying like, oh, in 2021 when Texas had their winter storm, the grid failed and Bitcoin miners weren't there. Now the Bitcoin miners are here. In 2022, the grid is fine. It didn't go down. But I think this is a good opportunity to dive into the nature of some of these demand response systems. What's actually happening. Are Bitcoin miners just these virtuous, altruistic actors in the economy, or are they economically incentivized to do so? And I think it's really important as Bitcoiners, as the Bitcoin mining industry, we be very clear on this narrative and don't trip ourselves up by being too rah about saving lives and things like that. Which, I mean, I think they're certainly providing a service to the grid, but it's not coming for free. So the two most popular demand response programs work throughout the country. One model is miners obviously want to drive down their price of electricity as low as possible. So they'll go to these utilities companies and they'll negotiate with them and they'll say, hey, we'll enter in a demand response program where we'll shut off our machines when you ask us to when demand gets high. But in return for doing that, we want to lock in a lower all-in electricity rate for the year. So these utilities companies could be selling electricity at spot prices 6 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Miners come in and say, hey, we'll enter in your demand response program, give us 4.5 cent power, and we'll pay that 4.5 cents, and then when you need us to turn off, we'll turn off. And mining companies essentially just run an analysis, a risk analysis. Is the lower cost of electricity worth the amount of downtime that will suffer during these periods of peak demand? And they basically run some risk analysis and say, all right, we're only going to be down 2 to 3 days a year. The 4.5 cent all-in cost of electricity makes up for that downtime. So yes, we'll engage in this. So that's the one economic incentive model. They can get a lower cost if they agree to turn off when asked. The other model, which is more popular in ERCOT in Texas, the Electric Resiliency Council of Texas, that's what ERCOT stands for. The demand response model miners are engaging in, some miners are engaging in, is, hey, we'll pay spot prices for electricity day in and day out, but we'll engage in this demand response program where we'll be able to sell electricity back to the grid at spot prices. And the way it works in Texas with ERCOT, you have day ahead pricing that's variable. And so when demand rises, the price for electricity rises pretty reflexively to that demand. And so miners can say, hey, instead of mining Bitcoin, I'm going to turn off and sell the electricity allotted to us to the grid at a higher spot price when demand is high. So that was what was happening over the weekend. It was getting cold. People were turning up their electricity. Miners were either asked to shut off, and they had to because they had that first model where they locked in the low prices and agreed to turn off when asked. And then the second model, they decided to shut off and sell their electricity back to the grid because they were going to make more money selling electricity than they would mining Bitcoin. So this certainly allowed individuals who were looking to turn on their lights and turn on their heat to have access to electricity, but it wasn't because Bitcoin miners were acting altruistically or trying to save lives. They were economically
Right.
incentivized to do so.
And that's why it works. The general concept that I think Marty explained it really well, but the TLDR is because Bitcoin miners are using electricity all the time, they're able to come into these markets, they're able to incentivize power generation build out and cheaper electricity. So you have more power generation that is happening there, but they can also turn off on demand. And when they do that, they're able to get paid essentially more than if they mine Bitcoin. So you're able to push up that total power generation capacity while they're still able to use it any time of the year, except when they need the full power generation, and then they're able to just turn off on the fly, get paid more than they would if they were continuing to run. And there's a key difference here because Bitcoin miners are often compared to data centers run by Amazon, Google, etc. Amazon can't turn off their data centers on the fly. If Amazon turns off their data centers in the middle of the holiday season, all of a sudden you can't shop on Amazon. If Netflix shuts off their data centers, you can't watch, the latest Rick and Morty episode. But Bitcoin miners are able to turn off on demand, put that power generation back to everyone else who needs it to use their electric heaters. And it creates this beautiful demand response scenario that you don't see with other power consumers. And on top of all of that, the way the Bitcoin protocol works is absolutely beautiful. So Bitcoin hash drops, 30, 40% over the course of a week because of this Arctic storm, this cold front. And as a result, the remaining miners are getting paid more. And people miss this because it's not just the difficulty adjustment. The difficulty adjustment is beautiful, but that happens on average every 2 weeks. And it takes a little bit longer in times when hash is dropping because blocks aren't coming in as fast. But pretty much instantly or relatively instantly, remaining miners are getting paid more because that average block time that people expect of 10 minutes increases. So because 30 to 40% of the hash drops off, the block time increases. All of a sudden, you have a backlog of transactions. The backlog of transactions results in people paying higher transaction fees to get into the next block if they're time sensitive. And as a result, the remaining miners that are online are making more in transaction fees because they're continuing to process transactions. So all of this happened without any centralized control on the Bitcoin side. But Bitcoin blocks continued to be processed, transactions continued to be processed, all during a holiday season when it's extremely difficult to do bank transfers. Bitcoin just kept on working beautifully.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And then if you're putting your hash in a pool like Braiins that does PPLNS, and they have miners engaged in demand response on their end, and they turn off you're not only going to benefit from higher fees because blocks are coming in slower and people want to get their transactions included in the next block, but you'll benefit from your overall share in that pool as well. So you'll get a higher percentage of the payout plus the fees. So if you're able to keep your machines on during this Arctic blast, you had a significant bump in revenue for a few days at least, and still even today
which
with hash rate still relatively depressed.
which brings me to the next point. Logan, can you pull up the tweet I put in Slack? We had this freak who tweeted at us after last rabbit hole recap. He's been heating his home with these 3 new gen Bitmains. And he's able to keep it at 71 degrees Fahrenheit, even though it's less than 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. His whole house is being heated with his Bitcoin miners. He's able to run that throughout the Arctic storm. Presumably, he was using electric heat to begin with already. And as a result, he's getting paid more Bitcoin at the same time.
Yes, yes. You got my mother-in-law. Do you need help? You're fine. Do you want to come say anything to the freaks?
Don't
My
shoo
mother-in-law's
her.
amazing. I'm not going to shoot her. I will never shoot my mother-in-law.
Marty,
The
how cool is this setup? I fucking love this setup. He's got it ducked directly into his forced air system in his home that was already existing. He's got filters in there, and it's just pumping heat. And he actually, oh, I think someone else went through, and I'm not sure if it's the same guy. Went through with like a heat camera and was showing it coming out of the different vents. Um, but I think this is fucking awesome. I think we see more and more of this, and it'll be great for hash rate distribution around the world.
Agreed. I wonder if this is profitable for him. Like if they're S19s that have access to Braiins, probably profitable around 11 or 12 cents. So if his all-in electricity cost is below that, he's not only heating his house for free, essentially, he's actually making a bit of money heating his house, which is
He's
pretty
probably
insane.
he might not be during this part, depending where he is. He hasn't said where he is. He said it's negative 20 degrees outside. So the question really is his electric rate pumping at the same time during the Arctic storm? But usually he is. And we had a freak in the comments that said it is the same guy. Yeah. So this guy like went around his house with one of those cool thermal video cameras, and he was able to show he would go into like his son's room, and he would just point at the vent, and you would just see hot air coming out of the vent, um, which was just really fucking cool.
Yeah, it's really gonna be cool when this stuff gets commercialized and you have HVAC companies that are incorporating miners into their setups, and you just have these out of the box duct systems that are compatible with Bitcoin miners. And yeah, when you talk about like distribution of hash rate, this could be the most bullish theme in that direction. Um, the timeline on when this becomes commercialized is up in the air, but you can certainly see that it's possible with Travis proving it right here. So hopefully there's some solutions to come to market that make it very easy for more and more people to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes longer in places that do hot water heat or steam heat, because then you need a little bit more complex system. But large parts of our country have very cheap electric, and the houses are all set up for forced air already. There was one guy I saw that during this, like he didn't have a setup, right? This guy's setup is extremely professional. I mean, look how clean it is. He's got thermostats, like everything's set up. But so like my house is a relatively old house, um, like built in the early 1900s. It has a intake air vent for the central AC central heat system, right? It just has this air take vent that is part of the circle loop that is heating and cooling the home, that has a filter already on it. And this one guy just literally just took an S19 and he just placed it right on top, right next to his air intake vent. Like he didn't have any ducting systems, nothing like that. It was just cold outside. He had an S19 and he just made it just so like regular old physics just was just sending hot air directly into that air intake vent, and then it just went throughout the rest of the house. So like when you're dealing with these forced air systems, like the actual install process is so much simpler than if you're trying to heat water or you're trying to heat steam and use the waste heat that way.
Yeah, you can easily do a hillbilly hack to start heating your home. I think I saw that one. It was
Yeah.
like hanging on like a ladder or something like that.
Yeah, he literally just had it just pointed into the intake fan, right? It was just like there was no duct or anything, but it gets the job done. And all of a sudden the heat is automatically pushed throughout the rest of the home.
Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We're so early, freaks. It's still so early when you think about. I mean, just when you think about like the efficient, still like people like to say Bitcoin mining is extremely inefficient, but if you actually look at the joules per terahash trend over time, that's been going down significantly. I mean, the newest gen miners, I believe, are hitting like 21.4 joules per terahash, which is insane. It was well over 100 only a couple of years ago. So in terms of actually being efficient with the heat generated from the electricity, Bitcoin ASICs are getting extremely efficient at that process. Um, and then if that continues, that trend continues and it gets more and more efficient, you can have significantly high hashing machines, warming houses, and doing it in a very electricity efficient fashion.
And then we were also talking about last week, if you want to go even simpler, Crypto Cloaks manufacturing a 3D printed housing that can be used as a space heater. And he has, so then you're literally just plugging it into the wall and putting it in whatever room you want to heat. And he has two developments since we last talked about it. First off is an Ethernet to Wi-Fi dongle, because everyone was saying that if it's going to be a space heater, I don't want two cables coming from it. I just want power. I don't want a power and an Ethernet line coming from it. And second of all, I like to think that we're part of the inspiration. He created a new cap on it so that if you spill something in it, or as Marty said last time, drool into it, it
You were
won't
saying
it
that.
won't damage your miner. No, Marty, I'm pretty sure. I mean,
No, you.
your father Marty now. So your first instinct was drool, but I was
Oh,
thinking like
oh,
beer spilled in it or something like that.
yeah, drool. I thought you were talking about your dogs drooling, but your dogs don't drool. Um,
No, no, they're pretty good about it. I have one that's a pit mix that she kind of drools when it's food time, but I don't think she'd drool into the heater unless I put her food
salivate.
on top of the heater.
The yeah, it's same as mine. Let's go back to like the Texas thing because it's one thing that rubbed me the wrong way. I get people are excited about the demand response narrative and Bitcoin supporting the grid, which again, when miners are economically incentivized to do so, they can add this layer of support to the grid and make sure that people are able to get electricity when they want it. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of people saying like now that Bitcoin mining's here in 2022 with these demand response programs, like you're not going to have the blackouts that Texas had in 2021, and I just rubs me the wrong way because it's a bit disingenuous. Yeah, genuous. Bitcoin miners were around in 2021 when the Texas grid had its blackout, and a lot of them profited handsomely off of that demand response program that allowed them to sell electricity back to the grid at spot prices. And if you were paying attention back then, spot prices skyrocketed to obscene levels. And those Bitcoin miners did turn off and were selling electricity back to the grid at those prices, and the grid still failed. And with the 2021 Texas grid failure in particular, even if the demand response programs were as robust as they are today in 2022, it wouldn't have stopped the grid from blacking out in Texas. There was a number of unfortunate
Yeah.
coincidences throughout the Texas grid. You had natural gas pipelines freezing. You had a sensor at a nuclear plant go down, which caused that nuclear plant to go under. You had the windmills freezing. There was nothing that a Bitcoin demand response program could have done to solve those weather related issues, the sensors issues, the pipeline issues. Those things all need to be weatherized, and Bitcoin mining is not going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of lessons were learned from the 2021 uh, chaos, right? I mean, I'm not because we can't understand. Like people fucking died, right? And as a
Yeah,
result, there were a lot of repercussions that happened and mitigations that happened to try and make sure it didn't happen the next year following it. But if we know anything from government and bureaucracy and overregulated bullshit, um, to think that it will never happen again is probably incredibly incorrect. And if I was a gambler, I would say to expect more infrastructure failure and to protect you and yours and be prepared for these situations. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to save you but yourself. And when I say that, what do I mean? I mean generators. I mean battery packs, like these new large capacity battery packs they have. Alternative sources of heat. One thing we saw in Tennessee is a lot of people have nat gas heat, but the nat gas heat requires a furnace fan that is powered by electric. So if you don't have another source of electricity for that fan, you're not going to get any heat. Um, you know, nat gas. If you have like those old school nat gas fireplaces, like I do, that is fucking awesome because that doesn't require any electric components. It's literally just turning a valve and then lighting the fucking gas on fire. But these kind of things, you have to think through them for yourself and for your family, and make sure that you're prepared in these situations. Because um, if mandibles have taught the freaks anything, we should be in store for a lot of infrastructure failures over the next years, decades, whatnot.
yeah. Batten down the hatches, freaks. No, that's another thing.
And
Speaking of
then,
natural gas,
yeah,
well, I'll just note this like another thing that contributed to a fallen hash rate. And I know this personally because it happened to one of our natural gas lines. If you have higher BTU content gas, there's more natural gas liquids involved in that gas, and so if your pipelines aren't weatherized correctly and the temperature drops to a certain level, the liquids contained in that gas will freeze and it'll prevent the flow of gas through the pipeline. And so that actually, I know that happened to one of my off grid sites that had higher BTU content gas, and the liquids froze, and the flow to our generator stopped, and so we had a few miners go down due to that as well. So it
yeah.
wasn't only demand response; you had literal gas freezing that was taking miners
And
offline
then
as well.
And then the best, I mean, the best situation to be in from a heat perspective is to have an actual fireplace where you can just put wood in and have wood to put in that fucking fireplace. Um, like I feel like, and wood stoves, I fucking love wood stoves. They're super efficient. They put off so much heat. They don't use that much wood. You can cook on top of them if you want to. Like the importance of having some kind of wood fireplace or wood stove if you live in an environment that can get cold where infrastructure can fail um, cannot be overstated. And then the other thing is that I've seen a lot of talk about, and I don't think I think a lot of it is like bear market scaries, um, but it shouldn't be dismissed, which is it's not a good thing if 30% of the hash rate turns off because the government is paying them more money than if from a Bitcoin censorship resistance at the protocol level. Like we don't want 30% of the hash rate be essentially bribed to turn off their miners at a whim. That does offer some troubling uh,
Attack vectors.
conclusions that can come from that. These miners are relatively captured already, right? They're connected to the grid. They have these massive contracts with governments and power providers. and they're easily compelled to do things. So I think most of the concerns were coming from people that don't like Bitcoin, and we're trying to essentially flood Bitcoin. But I think there's some substantiated fear and uncertainty and doubt there. And we should be relatively, decently concerned about it, right? We don't want to see that number grow. Like, imagine if we saw a situation where 60% of the hash was being turned off because it's cold in Texas and they're getting paid
Yeah.
by the government. Like, that would be bad.
Yeah. I mean, one caveat here, though, is that the Texas government doesn't control ERCOT. ERCOT is a free market solution. It's not really government run at all, but energy, electricity is a vital part of any functioning society. And so it's not, they're an arm's length away from the government.
They're both run by the same rich Texans.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. That's why at home mining, off grid mining, it's important. And not only that, but really making sure that companies like Gridless in Kenya exist. They're building out hash rate there. I know Paraguay is building some massive sites as well. Argentina, Nordic states. It's important that they grow out their infrastructure too and amass material amount of hash rate to help level things out geographically in terms of hash rate distribution. Because yeah, I mean, the way people are talking in terms of ERCOT, I mean, there's a lot of BS involved, but there's apparently like 30 gigawatts of contracts lined up over the next 5 years for miners to build out infrastructure within ERCOT and plug in. It's BS because there's only 12 gigawatts of electricity or contributing to the Bitcoin network right now. So it's hard to believe that you're going to be able to 3x that over that time period, considering the nature and the state of the mining manufacturers who took a big hit this year and probably aren't going to be able to produce as many ASICs next year and the year after if they can't get the foundry space. But there's a lot of demand, a lot of people posturing like they're going to spin up big mining farms down in Texas. So yeah, we should really be
Yeah, we'll
pushing
see.
and supporting like Paraguay, Kenya, Argentina, all these other areas, El Salvador, if they can get it together.
Yeah, we want to see global distribution, and we want to see, uh, like, on the micro level within that global distribution, we want to see it distribute to smaller operations, ideally not on grid, but if they are on grid, um, like smaller home mining setups, smaller, like mini industrial setups, right? Like businesses or whatever, that are running like 5 to 10 rigs. Like, the better. On
Yeah.
the mining note, Marty and a bunch of other great individuals in the mining industry will be coming down to Nashville second week of January. We have a full week of mining content. We're going to have drinks. We're going to have food. It's going to be fucking great at Bitcoin Park. So if any of you are interested, definitely go to bitcoinpark.co and come join us down there. Part of the reason I'm
Hell yeah.
exhausted is because I've been planning that during this holiday.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I'll get into town that Wednesday morning. So looking forward to meet up that night and then the event Thursday and Friday. Back to Nashville. A lot of Nashville trips. I guess
Love to
we'll
see
we'll
it.
end the mining. I guess is the mining section of the final RHR of the year, but there was a big story in the mining industry this week, and that was Argo selling their Helios location to Galaxy. So this Helios mining facilities in Texas, I believe, and they sold it to Galaxy Digital for $65 million. This was a $100 million deal Galaxy bought the facility for 65 million, and they're also extending a line of credit worth 35 million dollars that will be collateralized somewhat uh, by ASICs, I believe, secured by collateral package. I think it
Yeah.
was Argo mining
So
equipment.
it's a little more than that, right? Because
Yeah,
so
Argo had a
Galaxy,
deal with Galaxy already.
yeah. So presumably Argo was like on the brink of going bankrupt. Uh, Galaxy, as a creditor of Argo, because they had lent them money, needed to come up with a solution here. And then, so Galaxy buys the facility for $65 million, agrees to continue hosting Argo's miners at the facility for a set hosting rate, and then provides them a $35 million line of credit that is collateralized with ASICs that they are presumably hosting for Argo in their Helios facility, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like it was a distressed deal that gets
Yeah.
Galaxy a hosting facility, and we have the PR
And,
article up right now. Galaxy's positioning this as a way for them to expand hash rate. They want to become a big miner, and so it looks like they turned one of their ASIC collateralized loans that went sour into a distressed deal that they now control.
and yeah, and we've talked about like the danger of these ASIC collateralized loans, because when you actually need to call the collateral, the ASICs are, dumping in price, and they're hard to run, and they're hard to take possession of and then operate for profit. I would say that in this type of situation, first of all, Galaxy probably didn't have money, other options. But second of all, if you're going to provide an ASIC collateralized loan, at least have the ASICs hosted in your own facility, because if Argo defaults on this loan, they like sign a couple pieces of paper and then they just point those ASICs at their pool account instead of Argo's pool account, and they just continue running. Like they don't have to take possession of them, they don't have to move them to a different facility and plug them in. Like they're literally just running in the fucking facility, and then they just switch. They switch, who they're paying out.
Yeah, they don't even have to run into the facility. They can just VPN into
Yeah,
the like the miner management software, point the hash elsewhere. No, but this is another data point in how some of these bad basic collateralized loans will turn out. Obviously, last week we talked about NIDIG taking miners from Greenwich that were being used as collateral for a loan they lent out to them, and they basically just took possession of them and kept them hosted at Greenwich facility in New York. So this Helios acquisition by Galaxy seems to be a bit similar. This is a clean deal because Argo owned this facility. They weren't leveraging some third party, so they're somewhat vertically integrated. So it seems like this was a clean deal for Galaxy as well. All right, we'll just acquire the site um, and become the hoster for you. Obviously, we had Corsair file for bankruptcy as well. They're deciding to keep their miners running throughout their bankruptcy proceedings. So toward the end of the year here in 2022, we are getting some data on how these distressed loans will play out. It seems that those who are more vertically integrated create a situation that's more seamless in terms of figuring things out for the lender, at least that needs to figure out what to do with the ASICs. And yeah, I think it's important to know too. We talked about NIDIG. What are their long-term plans? I don't believe NIDIG wants to be a big miner. I believe they'll have their ASICs in the Greenwich facility and then try to flip them once the price recovers and price per terahash for the ASICs recovers, and they'll just sell those ASICs and the hosting contracts to a buyer at a higher price and wipe their hands clean. But with Galaxy, it does seem like they have intention to become a miner and actually manage their own hash rate. So it does. I don't think they're looking to flip this Helios deal. They saw this as an opportunity to expand their own mining operations.
yeah. They were running mining ops themselves during the bull market too. Very different situation than
Yeah,
NYDIG.
yeah. So beware, freaks, beware. What do we have next? We have a reminder to protect yourself if you use LastPass. It
Oh
seems
yeah,
as
I
bad
mean,
as previously thought.
so after RHR, I said, I look, so when you use LastPass, you keep your vault on LastPass's cloud, and it's encrypted with your master password. That vault has been compromised. Uh, there is no rate limiting that happens or anything like that. Like, attackers can brute force that password. And I said, if you have a weak password, you should be extra careful about it. You should rotate your passwords. Um, Someone with a relatively strong password, allegedly, on Twitter was also keeping some of their seeds. They were .eth, but they were keeping some of their Ethereum seeds um, on LastPass, and those seeds got compromised. So, freaks, I thought better of you guys, but after I retweeted that, a lot of people reached out to me individually that were keeping seeds on LastPass. First of all, do not keep seeds on an online connected account, period. The seeds are your secret backup words. They're essentially what your private keys are derived from. If anyone has access to those seeds, they can spend your Bitcoin. Don't keep it on an online account, period. You're better off writing it down on a piece of paper in multiple places and keeping it secure so someone doesn't get access to it. But, obviously, we've talked about many times on this show, seeds on steel, waterproof, fireproof, protect them physically. Ideally, have a passphrase, which is a user generated 13th or 25th word on top of that. That's the ideal situation to be in. Now, if you are keeping seeds on LastPass, if you are keeping important passwords on LastPass, you have been, consider all that shit compromised. Rotate all your passwords, sweep those wallets, generate new cold storage wallets, move your funds from those wallets to the new wallets. Do that ASA fucking P. Okay? Consider all that shit compromised. And in the future, consider using self hosted alternatives for storing your passwords. And like I said, with seeds, offline. Ideally, with passwords offline as well. You can use KeePass. That's KEE Pass. It's an open source. It's an open source password tool that you can store offline. You can store locally yourself. Bitwarden. You can self-host Bitwarden. It's open source. You can use Bitwarden's hosted tool. Bitwarden's hosting tool can be thought of similar to LastPass, and it's not, it's better than LastPass because it's fully open source, but you're still hosting it on someone else's cloud servers. You're probably not checking if the apps have been maliciously updated and could take your master password. Probably shouldn't do that. You should, if you're going to use Bitwarden, use the self-hosted Bitwarden. You can run it on a Raspberry Pi. You can run it on a Start 9, something like that, if you want to. But I really like KeePass. You can use KeePass as an Android client. You can use it with an old Android phone, keep it offline. And then the tried and true, sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but the tried and true, fucking paper notebook, guys. Paper notebook, write down your important passwords in the paper notebook, keep it in a safe. Someone's got to break into your home, get through your guns and dogs, get to the safe in order to get your passwords. It's a really nice, clean way of doing it. And let's be honest, your important passwords, you probably aren't using them that often to begin with, right? So just keep this all in mind. And if you are on LastPass, I think it was important to reiterate it because I had a lot of freaks message me um, that were keeping seeds on LastPass, and that's not good.
Shame on you, freaks. You should know better. Don't ever put your keys on the internet.
Oh yeah, and Joe's saying in the comments, when I say you can use an old Android phone, you don't have that connected to the internet. You keep that in airplane mode. You keep that in airplane mode. You run KeePass on that, or a computer that is just offline always. You run KeePass on that. You keep your passwords on there. And people say, "How do I get the passwords from there to the computer?" You fucking open the device and you type in the password. You read the password and you type it in. That's how you transfer it between the two devices. You open the notebook, you open your paper notebook, you read your password, and you type it into the computer. That's the good old fashioned way of securing it.
It sounds so archaic.
So archaic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the keep your passwords in a notebook theme as well. I think that's, if you can protect the notebook, I think that's the most secure way you're going to get. Um, this highlights another trend too. Like, hopefully, we can get away from this email password flow for accessing these things. Hopefully, tools like Bitcoin, protocols like Nostra. So, no sure Nostra. What are we going with? I want to settle this.
I like Nostra because Damus exists, so it's Nostradamus,
Okay, we'll
but
go Nostra.
not dying on the hill. Marty, you're wrong about Bitcoins. That's not the plural of Bitcoin. I will die on that hill, but I will not die on the Noster hill. Like, people can call it whatever the fuck they want. It's an acronym. It's actually not supposed to be pronounced. It's a fucking acronym.
It's good to know. But the point I was trying to make, hopefully, the proliferation and normalization of private public key pairs can hopefully set up a better UX flow for accessing services on the internet where you sign in with a private key that you secure offline.
Yeah, you
In
still
some
need
way
the
or
private
another.
key offline.
Yeah.
Nostra is a funny example because a lot of people are just pasting their private keys into websites,
Yeah. We need to normalize
which
like
obviously
a
doesn't solve anything.
YubiKey like devices when signing in. Maybe NFC enabled. That would be cool.
I don't trust UB
What do we
keys.
have next? You heard it here first. SBF $250 million bond was complete bullshit. He didn't put down. I mean,
Yeah, so
usually people expect you to put down 10%, which would have been 25 million, but
they didn't even put that down. His
yeah,
parents
that's
put up their $4 million home as collateral, which is probably worth less than $4 million now because rates are up and housing is collapsing. They put their $4 million home as collateral, and then his parents basically signed a form that said, if he disappears, we owe you $250 million.
yeah.
So
Do you
that
think he
was
did?
all just a marketing bullshit stunt about like the most expensive bond in history. Bullshit.
Very big bullshit. Um, hey,
And kudos
they're
to
gonna let,
CoinDesk for the deep dive here.
yeah, are they gonna let him off? Is he getting off? Seems
I
like
doubt it.
he's being treated favorably right now. Well, look at
I
this.
mean, he's
Logan, pull
definitely
up an
being treated like he has a bunch of rich parents.
yeah.
And it pisses me off. It pisses me off that every other person involved with Bitcoin or crypto is treated as a flight risk, but he's not. Um, but I don't think he gets off. But we'll keep the freaks updated. We'll see what happens. I think he gets Bernie treatment.
Well,
Bernie Madoff treatment.
here's some color on who's going to be overlooking his case, which is District Judge Louis A. Kaplan, who happened to be the judge to overlook the Jeffrey Epstein trial and the Kevin Spacey trial. Obviously, Epstein went to jail,
Yeah, but did you see
mysteriously
who the
died.
previous judge was?
No.
The previous judge recused themselves because her husband's firm was advising FTX.
Well, at least he recused himself. But this judge doesn't seem much better. Kevin
No.
Spacey should have gone to jail. I mean, it's becoming very clear that he is a rampant sexual abuser. Um, yeah, so he's got one of those judges who seems to pop up with these high profile cases
But
that
we'll
don't tend to
see.
bring
Do you
justice.
think Barry Silbert ends up in jail?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do
I
you
could
think
easily.
Machinsky ends up in jail?
I hope so.
I think SBF's the most likely out of all of them, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
yeah, I would not be
SBF
shocked at
fucked
all.
over a lot of rich people.
Yeah, I would not be shocked at all if DCG gets into big trouble and they're forced to do some type of discovery and open up their books and their relationships, that some shady shit. I mean, we've already talked about the 3AC GBTC fuckery that was going on earlier this year. I mean, that alone seems like there might be some smoke there that could lead to a fire that proves that something that's not really above the board was going on. There's some fuckery there. A lot of slapdicks in this industry. A lot of people fucking
Would you
around.
say slapdicks?
Yeah, we're the adults in the
That's a
room.
term I'm not really familiar with,
Oh, yeah, slapdick, that's a good one. It's just like
but I
sloppy.
know. What's the definition?
I think it's just like a sloppy slapdick. You know, like,
I mean, I can judge by context clues.
yeah, slapping around sloppily.
A slapdick is someone who doesn't know what the hell they're doing or what is going on, an idiot who never knows anything. From the
Yeah,
prestigious Urban Dictionary.
yeah, yeah. So a
Yep,
lot of
seems to fit.
yeah, a lot of slapdicks in this industry.
Ice Hockey 21 in the comments. Stay humble and don't be a slapdick.
It's true. It's true.
So people have been
Yeah,
asking me when I was going to stop saying stay humble and stack sats every morning. And considering that Bitcoin Twitter got all excited about easily being able to borrow against their home to buy Bitcoin, and the fact that Barry Silbert still owes Gemini users $900 million, I figured now wasn't the time to stop. So the beatings will continue until morale improves.
yeah, I have a feeling Stay Humble Stack Sats is going to end, and then Capso Dell is going to come back. It's going to be a Stay Humble
Something
Stack
like that.
Stack Sats tweet, and then Capso Dell will make his glorious return.
I think that's one of your better predictions, Marty.
Back to
Yo,
mining
Ice
news.
Hockey 21. Those tweets are not fucking scheduled, bro. Have some respect.
Matt's never scheduled a tweet in his life.
I don't think you can schedule on Nostra yet, and I've been doing it over there as well. So
They began it early. The Nostra. The
I guess
Nostra
you
crew's
could
beginning it
relatively
early.
easily. It's easy. It's easy to create a bot for Nostra, so I probably could do it if I wanted to, but I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently Sailor's been adopting Stay Humble Stack Sats.
Yeah, well, he learned the lesson the hard way on that one. As did I.
Yeah,
As did I.
yes, we all did. We all learned.
And
It
also,
seems
people
that
think like stay humble means like not calling out scammers or something like that. Like, when have I not called out scammers? It has nothing to do with that. It's internal. It's
what?
internal. It's a reminder not to don't over leverage yourself. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. Um, it has nothing to do with not calling out scammers.
Yeah, I don't see why those two would be mutually exclusive.
GPT-3 figured it out more than most other people.
GPT-3 is a psyop. I've decided.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, it's run by the WorldCoin guy.
Yeah, should be a massive signal to everybody. Bitfarm CEO resigns. Stock's down 95% this year. CEO stepped down, and they are promoting Jeffrey Morphy, who was their former COO, to Chief Executive Officer. I believe this move also moved Ben Gagnon to that COO
Love
role.
Ben.
Big fan of Ben as well.
He's
Yeah,
COO now. I missed that.
I believe so. I could be wrong.
Well, if he is,
Uh,
that's really great for them because he's fucking awesome.
yeah, So that's more mining news. Who knows if this was sort of a forced out because of the performance of the stock price over the year. I mean, operationally, I think Bitfarms is one of the better miners in the public world in terms of actually being able to competently run a mining company and do it well. I think they made some smart moves this year in terms of getting rid of debt, and um, I think they made it public that they were underclocking too. So like a smart strategy when hash price is low to become more efficient and increase your margins there. So mining stocks have gotten absolutely destroyed this year. Um, I think they're traded as a proxy to the Bitcoin price, and they'll outperform to the upside. Or historically, they've outperformed to the upside during bull markets, and um, outperform the other way as well, meaning they lose more money in bull markets than Bitcoin. Bitfarms is one of those, down 95%, which is a massive
Don't buy mining stocks, freaks. Just stay humble and stack sats.
disclaimer. I sit on the board of a publicly traded mining company.
Don't buy that one either. Disclosure 1031 has.
Next up, did you already mention this? The Gemini users file class action lawsuit. We already mentioned it, right?
Yeah, we mentioned it. Shit's heating up. I also like how I've been accused, because I keep talking about it, that I either got fucked by GBTC and DCG, or I got fucked by the Gemini Earn product. I just want to let you guys know that one of the dangerous parts about KYC is when these bankruptcy proceedings unfold, all the creditor docs get released and everyone gets docs that's a creditor. So there's no need for speculation. You will not find my name on there. But yeah, class action lawsuits happening.
Matt's a big fan of GBTC and Gemini's yield product.
As you freaks have noticed over the last 5 years, where I was just telling you to stay humble and stack GBTC, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, so that'll heat up. We've got software updates first. Let me triple check. We don't have a shout out this week. Ending the year without a shout out hurts a bit, freaks. So since we don't have shout outs, we'll read Boostagrams instead right now. And thank you to you freaks. We reached #1 on the Fountain charts this week. So that was
Appreciate you, freaks.
a very good feeling. Thank you for that great Christmas present.
And Dispatch was #3, even though we've taken there hasn't been a new sale of Dispatch in like 2 weeks because I've been taking a Christmas break. So appreciate you.
Yeah. Shout out to all the freaks contributing everywhere. We've taken a break at TFTC too. Top four boosts this week, all over 6-figure sats, all over 100,000 sats. This is
Thank you, freaks.
all-time high boost at Eric99 coming in with a palindrome boost, 321,123 sats. Second, stay humble, stack sats. Thank you, Eric, for that.
Great advice.
At MacroJack21, 210,000 sats. Merry Christmas, Matt and Marty. Thank you guys for all that you do. Looking forward to what's in store for 2023. Shout out to you, MacroJack. Keep crushing it, brother.
Appreciate you, freak.
At PW Marcinko, another palindrome boost, 111,111 sats. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, stay humble, stack sats. Sing the next part in the tune of 'Tis the Season. Mandibles, 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 fa la 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 la. Mandibles, 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 mandibles. Okay, that's enough of that. Thank you for everything, you two. Can't wait to listen again in the new year.
Mandibles.
Ooh, ending it with another
Appreciate you, freak.
palindrome boost. Another palindrome boost over 100,000 sats at B17, 110,011 sats. Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a privilege to stack with you in this dumpster fire of a year. Slowly, then all at once will happen in 2023. Are you ready to do hard things? I hope so.
Fuck yeah.
I like to think I am.
The honor and privilege is all ours.
It really
Truly
is.
appreciate you all.
Yeah. Thank you guys for contributing. Biggest boost week ever at Rabbit Hole Recap. Well over 500,000 sats, so almost 1,000,000 sats, I believe. So shout out to you freaks. If you guys are getting value out of this show and you want to give it back, podcasting 2.0 is the best, most direct way to do that. You can listen on apps like Fountain, Breeze, Podverse, a number of other apps. Send sats our way, either stream them
EchoLN.com.
or boost. EchoLN.com. Albi's integrating it as well. So the number of apps are becoming compatible. Podcasting 2.0 is growing by the week. And like Matt and I said, we really appreciate you guys coming back to the show week in and week out and going above and beyond and contributing to the show too. We love you guys. We're here because of you. And yeah, it's a special week for you guys supporting us. So thank you for that. On to software updates.
Appreciate
Big one
you,
from
freaks.
Samourai. Version 0.99.98G of Samourai has been released. This is a big one. Stealth mode is back. So any Samourai user who wants to add a layer of privacy to their setup can leverage stealth mode, which allows you to pick an app on your Android device. And it essentially acts as disguise. You click the button a certain amount of times and actually opens Samourai wallet. So they used Edge VPN as an example here in their release notes on Medium, where it looks like you have Edge VPN there, but if you click it 5 times, Samourai wallet opens.
No, it's deeper than that. So first of
Oh,
all, they're all first of all, they had similar functionality when they launched back in the day. Then Google made them remove it um, because it was distributed via the App Store. And since then, Google has relaxed their policy. So now, whether or not you download the APK directly from them, the app install file, or if you download it from Google, you'll have this functionality. You should download directly from them and verify the signature. That is the best practice way of doing it. But even if you download it from Google Play Store, you have it. But what I was saying is it's even bigger than that, Marty. These are, besides Edge VPN, the other 3 apps are completely functioning apps. Like you can keep notes in the Notes app, like the calculator will do calculator things. And they have ways of, inside the app, there's a discrete way of launching Samourai. So on Edge VPN, I believe it's you go and you enable like the India server, and that's where the app launches. So just, I don't know. It's just really, there's a QR code scanner that actually scans QR codes, and like you press, once you open the app, then you press inside of the app in a certain spot 5 times and it pops open. Pretty fucking cool phone. You see these fake apps, these decoy apps that actually function. Yeah,
yeah.
the calculator is 5 taps on the equal symbol inside the calculator app.
Playing a demo for those not watching and listening. Yeah, this is really cool. Cypherpunk shit. Shout out to the Samourai team for getting this out there.
Can be really useful if like you're in a border crossing scenario where they're like looking through your phone, they're looking for Bitcoin apps. Any kind of situation where someone has control over your phone.
Be aware. It's available to you Samourai users now if you want to go update. BTCPayserver version 1.7.3 has been released. Looking here. I think we announced.
It's bug fixes from their previous release.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week. We did.
Um,
Never hurts to remind the freaks though. What is this jam?
yeah, so a bunch of open source contributors have been building a join market interface, a join market web UI that makes it easier to use join market. You can install it on all the major node packages such as like Umbrel, Raspberry Blitz, MyNode, Start9. Most of the major node packages support it. And basically, so so Join Market is a decentralized collaborative transaction tool. You can construct coin joins without a centralized coordinator. Samourai uses a centralized coordinator. Wasabi uses a centralized coordinator. That coordinator could be pressured into shutting down their service. In this situation, the coordinator is actually the person who can be any person who decides to be a maker in Join Market. So Join Market is inherently more censorship resistant, but it needs a full node to run. So the idea here is if you're already running a 24/7 full node on like an Umbrella, Raspberry Blitz, a Start9, a MyNode, you install Jam next to it, and then you can have this nice pretty UI, because also Join Market does not have a native UI unless you're using Windows. You have to use command line usually. So you have this nice pretty UI where you can use Join Market. And there's been, maybe like there's like 20 contributors that have just been putting in the work to make this a reality. And it's been absolutely beautiful to see. So if you're interested in using Join Market, if you're interested in improving your Bitcoin privacy, Jam is still beta software, or maybe even alpha software, you would consider it. But at least play around with it, test it out, get familiar with it, get comfortable with it. And they would really like feedback, user feedback, on how they've handled the UI, how the experience works. So even if you're not a developer, there's a lot of help that you can provide as an open source contributor just from reviewing it and using it and getting comfortable with it and reporting back your feedback.
Hell yeah. If you're down and willing to test, go test it out, freaks. That a link to those release notes and that installation is in the show notes. Next up, FROSTR, multi-sig Nostra, whatever the fuck we're calling it. This is pretty cool. So this was developed by at UTXO Club, Nick on Twitter, or it's at UTXO Club on Twitter. His name's Nick. And it was inspired by Rot13 Maxi Rindell, who basically wanted somebody to develop a way in which to send a message via Nostr, you needed a multi-sig setup. You needed multiple signatures in a quorum to actually send a tweet. And so UTXO Club, or not a tweet, to send a message on Nostra. So he went and built this. It's called a FROSTR. So.
It's multi-sig. It's collaborative custody for Nostra, which is pretty fucking cool. And I think this is a good time to remind people that one of the beautiful things about Nostra is it is a protocol. It's a communication protocol that people can use for many different things. People are currently using it primarily to have these Twitter-esque experiences, right? With these Twitter-like front ends, like Damus. But it can be used for other things as well. And one of the cool things is Fiat Jaff, when he released the Nostra protocol, he did two things. First of all, it's extremely simple setup. The documentation is very clear. It's relatively easy for people to look at it and build on top of it. But second of all, he made it completely free and open source. And there's a lot of arguments about what is the best open source license. There's different nuances between different open source licenses and different trade-offs. What he ended up doing was he didn't use any existing open source license. He literally just put 2 words for the license, and it was just public domain. So anyone can build on top of it. Anyone can iterate on it. It can grow organically and virally without any permission from the creator. There's no company or individual that controls it. And this is one of the results of that, right? Is someone's able to look at how it's set up. They're saying this is relatively straightforward. All of this is free and open source, and I'm going to make it so that I can do multi-sig. I can do a collaborative custody tweet, essentially, which is really fucking cool. And we've seen organizations in the past that have had their Twitters compromised, or an intern gets drunk and decides to start tweeting ridiculous stuff. So it's pretty cool that you could have like a collaborative custody setup for like official PR channels. But you could also imagine it since it's just an open communication protocol, you can imagine it in a situation where a command goes out to initialize something, and you don't want that command to go out unless a certain threshold of key signers are actually able to sign and essentially take liability over that communication. So you can imagine it like the number one metaphor I like to use for collaborative custody in general is when we launch nukes in this country, like it requires multiple physical keys to initialize. So you have multiple people that decide that actual nuke is going to get launched. And this is a similar situation, but instead for Nostro posts.
Yeah, and I believe in the Cuban Missile Crisis, that's actually what stopped the nuclear war from breaking out. Was one of the Russian submarine operators who had one of the keys in the nuclear multi-sig, if you will, decided didn't have access to communications and decided not to turn the key. So I believe that's how it went down. That would be evidence from history that this type of liability distribution can prevent some chaos. Shout out to everybody building on Nostra, whatever the fuck we're calling it.
Truly grateful. Appreciate you all. It's really cool seeing an open source protocol being built out in its infancy. I'm not going to put it on the same level as Bitcoin, but unfortunately, I wasn't around to see Bitcoin being built out in its infancy, and it's really cool to see Nostra being built out. And
Yeah,
I'm very grateful for everyone who's partaking in it and contributing.
shout out to all of the thankless developers out there building this stuff because they want to see freedom in the world. And why are we building it? Because on these centralized social media platforms, you have to give up a lot of data to actually access their services. Twitter being one of those, and they had a massive data breach. 400 million accounts have been compromised allegedly. There's somebody who's been shopping around information on the dark web. I believe they had a list of 1,000
It's not even the
users,
dark web. It's just
or is it?
it's breach forums, which is you can get access it via Tor, but you can also access it on ClearNet. No bullshit. Link to it on the bottom. Um, I don't know if you don't have a VPN on, Logan, you probably shouldn't click the link. Which is why I linked to the No Bullshit Bitcoin post. But he says he has 400 million user accounts, including phone numbers and emails. What are the repercussions of something like this? He wants to sell it to Elon because if he releases it publicly, Elon's going to have to pay a massive GDPR fine, which is Europe's privacy regulation. So he thinks Elon has an incentive to just pay him instead of paying him a lesser amount instead of paying the EU the fine. But what are the implications of this? The implications of this are if someone is using a phone number and email address attached to their legal identity, people can use that to link their Twitter account to their legal identity, and particularly phone numbers are extremely easy to link to your legal identity. And recently, Twitter has decided that you can pay for a blue check for $8, which I don't think is the worst idea. But if you pay for the blue check, you get priority. You get priority in the algo. So your tweets show up to more people, your replies show up on the top of replies, basically building the whole system in a way that if you pay, you get a better experience on Twitter and you get more reach on Twitter. It's this dark incentive. And why is it a dark incentive? Not because of the paying, in my opinion. It's a dark incentive because then you also need a verified phone number. And Lop apparently tried to pay for his blue check, and they're filtering out known burner numbers. So they're trying to essentially force people into putting a number that's attached to their legal identity to get priority access on Twitter and get priority reach on Twitter. Those people are obviously more susceptible to these kind of compromises, putting more people at risk. And maybe you can get around it if you go buy a prepaid SIM card with cash that's maybe not on a block list or something like that. But let's be honest, 99% of people who pay for a blue check are going to be using doxed phone numbers. A lot of those people are NIMs. And it's not just Bitcoiners, right? Like if you're an Iranian anti-government activist and you're on Twitter and you're using a NIM to protect yourself from the Iranian government, and this data leak gets out, your whole family might end up in jail and you might get executed. So like lives are legitimately on the line here in these types of compromises, and they should not be treated. They should be treated with the severity that they deserve, which is that you are actually putting people at risk.
I mean, this is one of the biggest themes of the show throughout the last 4.5 years is these data breaches. They happen time and time again. Like we said earlier, it would be nice if we can restructure the way individuals interact with these services on the internet by transitioning to private public keys, which Nostra is trying to normalize. And again, we just talked about Nostra, people building apps on that, and you juxtapose it to a data breach like this, and it acutely highlights why the design choices that projects like Nostra are making are extremely important to protect the privacy of their users in the long run, where all the centralized social media companies do not afford you that luxury. You have to give them all this personal identifying information, and it just sits out there.
Well,
These databases aren't secure.
they're literally data surveillance companies. Like their whole business plan is to monetize our data. So, I mean, we saw the case with Facebook where they were like encouraging people to put phone numbers with two-factor authentication for security reasons, and they didn't make clear that they were also using those numbers for marketing purposes.
Very
So
slimy.
yeah, we need to see more platforms without rulers, more protocols without rulers, and then platforms can be built on top of them. One of the cool things about Nostra is, at its core, is this idea that your public key private key pair, similar to Bitcoin, is essentially your identity, and you can move with that. So if you're using a Nostra relay that decides to start censoring, and some of them will presumably, you can move to another relay. You can move to your own. You can self-host your own relay. So it gives you it gives the user more power and more mobility, right? And when you have these centralized walled gardens, that's the exact opposite. So you have this like centralized dictator that decides what and how you will use the product. And then when they decide to deplatform you, you end up in a situation where you're trying to tell people how to find you on other platforms. With Nostra, you can just move to a different server or host your own.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Next up, we have the U.S. housing chart that you posted earlier this morning, and it's a bit scary.
You like my
This
meme?
time,
This time is different.
it does. I mean, it's funny because obviously I don't have to explain it. You're never supposed to say this time is different, but by the looks of this chart, it does seem like something may be different this time around in the U.S. housing market.
That's brutal, huh?
Yeah. So for you freaks who are listening, you cannot see the screen. We have a chart of the cumulative change in existing single-family house sales during Fed hiking cycles. So we have 1977, 1983, 94, 99, 2004, 2015, and 2022, which were years in which the Fed was hiking rates, and the 2022 line is down almost 25%, where
It just goes like straight down, while the others are like at least kind of like down to the right.
yeah. So what is this telling you?
I mean, we've talked about this in the past. Like, I feel like, I, you know, no one knows what they're doing. And the idea that we have, how many people are involved in, was it like 8 Fed chairs? How many is it? 12 of them? I don't even fucking know.
12.
Like you
There's
have,
actually 15,
12.
but there's 15, but only 12 can vote.
The fact that you have like 12 suits sitting in a room that are making these decisions is fucking insane. And they have no idea what they're doing. This is all uncharted territory, so don't uh, uh, stay humble out there is what you should do, and prepare for worst case scenarios, because no one's going to save us except for ourselves. But this is just a perspective chart. This is just don't model things off of the past. We're in uncharted territory, and if you're thinking about buying a home, unless you absolutely need it, maybe wait off. I know me and my lady have been trying to secure a Citadel for a couple of years now. And I think we're going to rent for the short term. Um, my With Bitcoiners, it's a little bit different, right? Because not only are you watching the housing market, not only are you watching the Fed rates, not only are you watching inflation, but you're also watching the Bitcoin price. And we have seen that Bitcoin, as the closest thing to a free market that we've ever had in humanity, tends to bottom first and recover first. So I'm kind of watching for a sweet spot where housing is still getting fucking hammered, and Bitcoin is recovering at the same time. That is kind of that sweet spot to pay attention to if you're a Bitcoiner looking for a proper home to protect your family. I would say investment real estate remains a shitcoin and will remain a shitcoin, and I'd rather own Bitcoin. But there is a core value prop of controlling your own land and owning your own land and being self-sustainable for yourself and protecting your family and having a proper foundation for your family. And that's my target. That's my goal.
Mine as well. And I too. It's funny, I was getting laughed at last year when we moved to Austin. We decided to rent instead of buying a house. People were like, "What are you doing? Let's just buy. Real estate's pumping." It turned out to be a good decision. We will continue to rent until that Goldilocks situation the Matt just described happens as well. Yeah, I think we're in the market for a second car too. We're just waiting. I think there's going to be a lot of repossessions this year. There's going to be a lot of cars on the market, 2023, 2024. Then I think housing is obviously suffering a significant downturn right now. I think that will only continue. It's weird too because a lot of the boomers have already paid off their houses in full, so they can just sit, keep it illiquid. They won't be forced sellers at any point. So you have this situation where prices can keep falling, but supply can remain relatively illiquid because the boomers can just hold on to their houses that they already paid off.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong about this, and I'm humble enough to admit if I'm wrong, if I'm called out, but I'm pretty sure that I was the first person to call real estate a shitcoin, and I got hammered for saying that. So, told you so.
Hey, we're going to give you the alpha years in advance, freaks. That's why you come here. Last but not least, we must make note that the free and open source contributor tickets to Bitcoin 2023 are now available to apply for if you're an open source contributor building on Bitcoin or building around Bitcoin, and you want to apply for a free ticket to the open source via the open source stage that is available now. You can go to
Yeah. Well, it's not.
bit.tc/open-source-contributors.
Yeah, it's not just open source stage. So as many of the freaks know, in fall of 2020, when Bitcoin Magazine was like 8 people, I joined them as an advisor. One of my main focuses there is the open source initiatives. Last year, we gave away over 100 tickets to open source contributors of 32 eligible projects. This year, the program is being expanded to 50 eligible projects. We just announced the 33rd eligible project, which is Nostra. As you freaks might have expected, it's probably not that much of a surprise that they were added. And the goal here is first of all, add a few more Bitcoin projects, but I also want to add, Bitcoin tangential projects, because a lot of the interest that we've seen is let's get non-Bitcoin developers to a Bitcoin conference. Let's show them, the value prop of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community, and hope that they start building in Bitcoin as well. So if you have any ideas for projects we should add, definitely reach out to me. I'm all ears. Not pretending that I'm an all-seeing eye here in terms of projects that should be eligible. But we have the same 32 projects that were eligible last year, plus Nostra, and then we plan to add 17 more projects before the conference in Miami. So this is something I'm very excited about. Also, if you're not an open source contributor already, consider, supporting Bitcoin open source projects and contributing. And I can't promise it because I do not run the company, but more likely than not, you will get a free conference ticket next year. So it's a nice little cherry on top. Any new open source contributors that came since the initiative last year now get a free ticket. So it's a really cool initiative.
Shout out to you, sir, for pushing this initiative forward. It's a great one. And the open source
Yeah, I
stage
mean, shout out to everyone at Bitcoin Magazine for supporting the initiative. There's a lot of support within the org, especially on the leadership side. Absolutely love to see it. For the open source stage, it is a bear market and a recession. So I just want to be clear. I have a lot of great open source contributors that have reached out about participating in programming for that. A lot of those wheels are still in motion. Not exactly sure how that will look. We do want a very strong open source presence at the conference. Some more details on that will be released. But if you did participate on the open source stage last year, just know you're obviously on the short list to participate this year as well.
Beware, freaks. Beware. Bear market and a recession. Double whammy.
The open source stage last year was straight fire, and it's probably one of my most proud moments in the Bitcoin space that we fucking pulled that thing off.
You guys crushed it. Most high signal stage at the conference.
Especially since it ended with Rabbit Hole Recap Live.
Yes. Shout out to Craig.
Largest stage we've ever done Rabbit Hole Recap on.
I think we deserve the main stage this year. I'll just put that out there. But if they want to bring on Jake Paul and
Marty, if you don't think within a few days after each conference that's the first thing I say, then we should just stop Rabbit Hole Recap.
I know. I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to anybody at BTC Media listening. You can have Jake Paul, you can have Tim Dillon, you can get Floyd Mayweather up there, but if you want the real fireworks, you get RHR. That's all we got for this week. We got a play date with some of my best friends from high school, my children, this afternoon. So looking forward to that. Thank you for accommodating a noon Eastern start, Matt, to make sure we get there on time.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't, do 4.5 years of Rabbit Hole Recap every week without one of us accommodating the other every week. It feels like it's pretty much constant. I had my lady asked me yesterday. She was like, "What time is Rabbit Hole Recap tomorrow?" I was like, "No fucking idea. I will text Marty in the morning."
Yes.
So shout out to our wives for also accommodating Rabbit Hole Recap week in and week out. Couldn't do without you both.
Yeah, as we round out 2022, I want to give a shout out to your lady, my lady. It's been a great year. It's been a hectic year in Bitcoin and markets and in the world in general. I'm very, very happy that my wife brought our second child into the world this year. Happy, healthy little baby. Taking care of our oldest as well. And yeah, she makes me a better man. I want to thank her for that. Been a crazy year. Probably the craziest year I've ever experienced in my life. Not only in Bitcoin, but maybe 2008 or 2001 may take the cake, but I think 2022 is up there with those years in terms of chaos and world changing
Okay, so
events.
Marty, 2020, craziest year we've ever been a part of. 2021, if you go back to years in review, we probably said the same thing. 2021, craziest year we've ever been a part of. 2022, I think I would co-sign what you said, craziest year that I've ever been a part of in my lifetime. 2023, shaping up to be a doozy.
Yeah,
What do you
I'm not going to
think?
make any predictions. I'm not making any predictions like I did a couple of years ago.
Don't bring that
But
up.
yeah, I think it's going to be crazy. I don't think any of these systemic problems that have reared their head this year are going to go away anytime soon. If anything, they'll only be exacerbated, and more structural problems will be laid bare. So I think the roller coaster and the chaos, at least in the overarching geopolitical landscape, is going to continue. What happens to Bitcoin? Who knows? Maybe it gets dragged down into the morass of a high interest rate environment with the potential for World War III in a global recession, or do people begin to wake up and notice the unique value prop of Bitcoin, the asset, and the peer-to-peer network, and begin adopting it in mass? And does the decoupling of Bitcoin from traditional markets happen? I'm not going to say that that is going to happen. Probability of it, I would put probably very low, but
How low,
could
Marty?
happen. Like 5%.
So, I mean, we were completely wrong on our hash rate prediction last year.
I said below 300.
And then we corrected like 2 weeks later.
Did we?
Yeah, you can check the tapes. We were like, oh no, we were too bearish. It's gonna blow through. Um, I I mean the freaks can check the tapes. We'll stand by the tapes, regardless of what they say. Uh, I think Bitcoin is in a very interesting scenario right now, right? And I think um, Neil said under 200. He was his lifestyle right now. He's taken penance over it. He doesn't have to repent in the comments. He's felt the pain more than a lot of us. Um, Appreciate you, Neil. The I think Bitcoin's in a very unique situation because we crashed before, like as the global economy runs into like a slow rolling recession. Um, we're in a situation where we could see global chaos continue to unwind, and Bitcoin is now like, as every bear market we've seen, which we haven't had a bear market in a recession previously, in a global recession, Bitcoin was birthed out of the 2008 collapse. But we can see a situation where global chaos unwinds. And it might not be in 2023, it might be 2024, it might be 2025, but we can see a situation where Bitcoin's already down 85%, right? And only the ride or die holders remain and the stackers remain, right? So it's only strong hands at this point. There might be some weak hands sitting around, DCG collapse, who the fuck knows? There's always a question mark around Binance, or of course the Tether truthers want us to remind people that there could be a Tether situation. So there's all these different things that could still happen. But for the most part, most Bitcoin is held by true believers, by people that understand how to use it in a sovereign fashion, because the people that didn't all got wrecked. And we could see a situation where Bitcoin decouples and starts recovering and starts moving up. And then all of a sudden, this safe haven narrative, which I think we all still believe, I know I still believe it strongly. There's no other, Bitcoin, cash in a bank account is bullshit. Cash under your mattress, at least you get privacy from it, but like can be debased at will. The Fed will pivot at some point. There will be epic money printing at some point. Bitcoin is the only true safe haven to me. And I think that narrative can get cemented in this type of situation because you have global chaos unwinding while Bitcoin is recovering. And then it just kind of becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it could get really, really crazy out there. And that's why I think massive friend of the pod and also coming to Nashville for mining week, NVK, uh, always says, like, treat your Bitcoin like it's worth 10x what it's worth today, and treat all the decisions you're making like Bitcoin. Imagine Bitcoin is recovering and pumping and going up in a situation where global chaos is unwinding and the things you read about in mandibles are happening. And in that situation, what decisions do you wish you had made 2 years previously? What decisions do you wish you had made a year previously? And operate under that assumption, like operate under that situation. And the stakes in that kind of situation are going to be higher than ever. People will be hungry, infrastructure will be failing, people will be looking for scapegoats. Bitcoiners are the easiest scapegoats in the book. Like, most people will throw us under a bus in a second. If being around your family for the last 2 weeks hasn't proven that to you, nothing's going to prove that to you. And just operate under that situation, and we could have this crazy situation play out still. But in the meantime, the goal is survival. The goal is to just protect your friends and family, protect yourself, take care of yourself, make sure your immediate needs are handled. But also, constantly be looking forward, pushing forward, continue your learning, continue your improvements.
Yeah, very well put. I just increased my probability to 20%. Yeah. No, I mean, you make a good point. Like, who's left to sell? Maybe there are a few forced sellers left at some point in the future. Grayscale, GBTC, Digital Currency Group, um, Binance, who knows? But the Bitcoin market cleared a lot of malinvestment this year. A lot of forced sellers sold a lot of Bitcoin, whether it be those who had collateralized loans out that went bad, miners that had to dump all their Bitcoin to stay alive. I agree. I think what remains right now is ardent believers who get Bitcoin's core value prop. And not only is the backdrop of global recession and the seeking after of safe haven assets, hard assets like Bitcoin, going to be a big theme, but as governments and central banks continue to lose their grasp on control over their populaces, they're going to begin censoring people in written form and in monetary form as well. And that's where the P2P aspect of Bitcoin really shines. And not only can it be seen as a safe haven asset from its hard money properties, but just from its censorship resistance as well. That could be a rising theme that people really begin to respect in 2023.
Oh yeah, the censoring will continue and it will escalate 100%, especially as more and more people stop using cash. Not only from government pressure, but also just because of convenience, people have chosen not to use cash. Um, so we will see the financial ramps get more and more censored. That's why you need to learn how to use Bitcoin in a freedom-oriented way, ASAP. Get comfortable with it. Hopefully, Pubkey will start accepting Bitcoin soon, so you can go spend there if you live in New York. But support local merchants, support merchants that accept Bitcoin or cash. I think cash in the meantime, is a very important censorship-resistant tool in terms of payments. But yeah, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think tools like Bitcoin, tools like Nostra, tools like simple message encryption, whether that's GPG or more complicated tools like Signal, are going to become more and more necessary and will empower individuals. And as a result, that chaos that almost seems inevitable could get diminished. Like, I still expect a chaotic situation. but we can reduce the darkness. We can reduce the length of darkness. We can reduce the severity of darkness. But yeah, just prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Treat your fellow neighbors and people with respect. Be kind, but don't be naive. Yeah, I mean and we'll be here every week. If Bitcoin goes to zero, we'll be there that week for a rabbit hole recap. Like I said that in the past in all caps, and I'll say it again today. Marty and I will be there to have a fun discussion with y'all.
Yeah, and for the Bitcoin going to zero episode, I promise not to cry. I'm not going to cry like the bankless guy. But,
that one's going to be
I
audio
will.
only. That episode would be audio only. I'm a simple fucking man, guys. Like I've had freaks reach out to me. They're like, are you sitting on dry powder? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Like 99% of my family's value is held in Bitcoin. And as we get more value, whatever's in fiat, we stack with. And anything that comes in Bitcoin gets held in Bitcoin. And I make sure that we don't have debt, that we have our essential needs. But, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't succeed here, we're going to live in a very dark world. Our children are going to live in a very dark world. Our grandchildren are going to live in a very dark world. And I know it might sound dismissive or talking down, but people that are not thinking on generational timescales, like their opinion is unnecessary to me. Like that is how I look at this situation. And if you're looking on it in a shorter term than that, then you've missed the entire plot of both humanity and Bitcoin.
Completely agree. We're going to win, freaks. We're going to win. We're all in. I wouldn't want it any other way. You guys got 2.5 more days in this year. Go enjoy them. Things are chaotic. They're probably going to continue to be chaotic in 2023 and probably even escalate. But don't think about that right now. Go enjoy the last two days of the year. Enjoy it with your family. Reflect a little bit. Prepare a little bit mentally. Shift priorities if you feel like you need to. But take a break. Enjoy these last 2 days.
I love you, freaks. I love you, Marty. This year has been special. Next year is going to be even better. Stay humble, stack sets.
Peace and love.